Hi, Kat.
Hi, Von.
How are you?
Very good. How are you? Good.
So today we have a really special topic and we're going to be talking about grief. And we're so lucky with Michelle today, who is a Dubai expat and is going to share her grief journey with us. But before we start, I want to talk about grief and also how it affects expats differently and how it is a immensely complex and unique, intense emotional experience that essentially affects every aspect of a person's well-being. And this is what makes it so unique and so hard to talk about. And one of the things that we are doing with our work is not just moving the stigma from mental health and talking about it, but also talking about situations like grief. Grief affects all of us differently. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. I would experience it very differently to you, to someone else. But there are some similarities in the situations, but at the end of the day, we experience it very differently. And I think what's universally true, though, is that people have a hard time talking about it. They really have a hard time talking about it. And we don't make enough time to talk about it, and we don't make enough space for it at all.
I would agree with everything you've said, and part of the whole podcast was to destigmatise mental health issues. And there are certain topics that are more stigmatised than others, and particularly in Western culture, of which all of us here are a part of. Grief in particular is something that we tend to hide and is something that we tend not to talk about. It's very hidden. Whereas in other cultures, I'm thinking Indian culture, and there are proper ways to grieve as a community, and it's very public and it takes days and there's a real process to it. I know my background is Greek, and there's basically a 40-day process that happens following the death of a loved one, and it gives structure and it gives a sense of uniting around that and the comfort of it's not just on the day that it happens, it's an ongoing thing. And then there's a 1-year memorial and so on. So these sorts of, particularly, we always talk about how people don't like to sit with difficult emotions, and grief is one of those. And it's something that even if someone is sharing their story and you're hearing it, you feel it to the core. Like you really feel the heaviness and the pain of it, but also beautiful things can come from grief as well.
And I love that you talked about that cultural aspect of it, because as expats, we are so culturally defined. We can also learn from other people's culture and how they deal with grief, because there's no one way to deal with grief. There's no read this book and you're done. And so it's such a tricky emotion as well, because if you think about it, when someone's feeling an uncomfortable emotion like anger, if your target is then to feel calm, okay, so that's my target. But with grief, it's so complex. What is the target? It's almost grief is like this arrow, but it doesn't have any target because there's no end to it, and there shouldn't be. And you should never have or think that there is some sort of end to your grief journey. When someone is grieving, there is just so much energy, I guess, that sort of needs to be dispersed. But where does it go? You know, that energy with anger, okay, so now my target is to be calm. I know what to intervene. I know what to do. But with grief, it's so much different. And as expats, it's more unique for us and it's harder, because if we're grieving here. We're not grieving at home. We're not grieving with our support systems. We're not grieving, as you mentioned earlier, going to, for example, the grave. We're here, and that can be hard. And so managing that grief and the memories and such unique challenges with grief as an expat.
And just the beautiful story that we're privileged to hear today. And genuinely, when we're share our stories and someone is generous enough to come and talk about this sort of thing that is, you can't think of something more close to your heart. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. I should have preempted that from the beginning. But for someone to be so generous and share that story, it's a privilege. And we're
beyond lucky to have you here, because what we're trying to do with Share Your Story is we want people to come on and share their growth and their resilience in their journeys. And that is so important. And we truly believe that when we hear other people's stories, you grow and you learn, and in some way you can heal. So thank you so much, Michelle, for coming in. And I'm wondering if you can let us know a little bit about how your grief journey showed up for you emotionally and physically and socially.
For me personally, so emotionally, it was just this constant wave of shock, disbelief, anger, just so many different emotions. And it was just, you would never stay at that one emotion. And they say that grief is not linear, and it's so true. You go through so many different emotions every single day, and no day is the same. One day you wake up and you're feeling just in shock again, and it all starts all over again. But it's about learning to manage those emotions and work around them. If I reflect back, I can say that, so it's been 5 years this August, and I think at the beginning, like, you're just in shock, so you're not aware. You're not aware that you're grieving. People are obviously saying, are you okay? Or family members, everyone, you're all together, but you don't actually think that you're grieving. You're just in that shock mode. And it's not until the physical symptoms then start to creep in. Like for me personally, it was like not being able to sleep.
Completely just still in shock. But
Yeah.
also the complexity of it. You had a newborn baby, and if you feel comfortable, I know we've talked a little bit before we started recording, a little bit about what you were grieving. Anything that you feel comfortable to share, you are welcome to share. Equally, you don't have, just whatever you feel able to. So can you just tell the viewers a little bit about what it was that started that grief process for you?
I actually made a coffee, and where we lived, our sofa backed onto like hundreds of sheep. So we were in the middle of nowhere, we were on a farm, and I remember making a coffee, looking out onto the sheep, sitting down, I was feeding my daughter, and I remember thinking, like, life is so good. We are so lucky. And I was just so happy, like really happy. And then my phone rang, and I remember seeing it was my mum, and I remember the split second thinking, should I answer it? And then, anyway, she then rang to give us the news that my sister had died. And when she said the words, Sarah's died, it was like, which Sarah? Which Sarah's died? It just didn't feel, it didn't register at all. And when you ask how it showed up about emotion, I remember the early days, every single day we would just get up, and for me, I hadn't slept, so I'd get up, go downstairs, make a very strong coffee, and we would all just congregate at somebody's house, and we would just sit there in shock. It was almost like a dream.
Mm.
The shock and the anxiety was just so bad, so I didn't see any friends. But friends would still send messages, and there was a couple of friends that just turned up. And I remember another friend turned up with some really nice cookie, and she was just like, even if you don't want me to come in, it's fine, but I just want you to know that I'm here. And that, I'll remember that forever. But yeah, to go back to socially, I definitely just segregated myself away from everybody. But then after time, you have no option. With 3 children, you have to, life goes on. You have to keep going out. You have to keep showing up every single day. You have to take them to the park. When you're grieving, life doesn't stop.
I wanted to say just quickly, just back to that friend of yours and where you had said, I'll never forget that, because I think that's part of the stigma. You don't want to talk about grief, and if you're around someone that's grieving, it's almost like you don't want to say anything. You don't want to make it worse, and that's why people don't say anything. But the fact that you just said her doing that, coming over with some cookies and going, I'm just going to be here, even if you don't need me, and I'm just going to sit here. And that was so important.
It's a huge difference as well, just knowing that you've got somebody there just to sit with you as well. And had that not have happened to me, I would never have known that is what a good friend would do. I probably would be the same. I would probably maybe try and avoid the conversation. A really good book that I found really interesting, which was Gordon's Soul for Happy. So he lives in, and he lost his son, and he's turned his pain into a purpose as well. And part of his journey is why I've taken on a similar sort of perspective. I took a lot from that book,
So his story gave you inspiration
Yes.
on how to move forward, or you don't never really move forward, but how to process.
Yeah.
Can I use that word? Would you say that?
And I think maybe reframing the way you look at, like he says that, yes, Ali, his son, died, but he lived, and he looks at the positives, and he says that he knows that his son would want to make lots of people happy. So his mission is to try and make 1 million people happy.
These things, anything that can help someone in the depths of their grieving process, like, is just the most beautiful blessing ever. And I think, you know, someone that has gone through it and lived it, then you continue that process by, as you say, like, understanding another. And I think being an expat, like, that is also what we tend to do. As I've been in Dubai, 2 of my closest friends in Australia, childhood school friends, both sadly lost their dads too early. And I just felt so helpless being here. I went to a church, I lit candles for them, I took photos and sent it to them. But it's hard to be there for our loved ones when we are geographically across the other side of the world. But that's a perfect example of what to do. Don't just hide, like, really show up and be there, even if you can't physically be there.
Exactly. And also just the important part that you mentioned, which was the reframing how you were working with it, because it's that you can have that healthy grief with healthy, valid thoughts.
Yep.
Or you can have the unhealthy grieving with the unhealthy, unvalid thoughts. So reframing how you think about it is such, as you said, an important part of the process, and working on those thoughts as well and identifying them. And it's okay, because it's full of these complex and powerful emotions. And I'm wondering, so in Dubai, how did you moved away then?
So it was nearly 3 years later that I then moved. So I've been here now for nearly 2 years.
And how do you do the grief journey now? How do you remember Sarah? Is it harder as an expat to do that?
I think moving away from your country and your family, there's a layer of guilt because you feel that you're leaving them behind and you're moving away to rebuild and to restart, and you almost feel like you're letting them be the ones that hold that grief at home. But actually the reality is grief, it doesn't stay at the airport. It comes with you uninvited. Dubai has given us everything and more that we could have wished for a family. I still have moments where, I don't know, just last week I was out running and it just comes in a wave, like out of nowhere, and you can't prepare for that. So, yeah, you still carry that grief. It's still hard. And if anything, it's an extra layer of guilt because you feel that your family are at home and you're not there to support them. But
what do they think about it, though? Like, we carry that all. I think every expat is
Guilt.
Guilt.
Yeah.
The guilt's always, like, very close to the surface. But do they, and it's okay if they do, but are they supportive of you being here? Are they happy that you're
they
here?
are so happy. Like, for my mum, I can just, every time I phone her, she'll say, "Oh, I'm so glad that you phoned." I speak to my mum probably
More.
3 or 4 times a week.
Wow.
And she will say, "Oh, I'm so pleased that I've heard your voice. I just know how happy you are." And that makes me, my mum said, "If you ever came back, I'd be really disappointed because I can just see the life that you guys have out here." And they've all come out for holidays, so you make better memories. And when you're together, you're more present than if you were over visiting in the UK and popped over for a cup of tea or whatever it is. You're always doing something, whether it's, I don't know, prepping food for dinner or getting snacks ready for the kids. When they come here, they're staying with you and you are together as a family making memories.
Yeah, such special memories.
And I can honestly say the last 2 years that we've been here, those times that we've had family come over, we've got more out of those memories than we have done prior. And we were a really close family, but the memories that we've formed out here are more meaningful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I would imagine it helped as well with honouring that grieving process and honouring Sarah as well, because you get the more quality time now. Because even though it's 5 years, I wonder what it would look like if you were home versus here.
Yeah.
It would be so different, and whether that's helped in any way.
I think for me personally, it's majorly helped, just in lots and lots of different ways. But then equally, it also adds, again, when I say about a layer of grief, it's a different type of grief when you're an expat. Because when you come out here, nobody knows you. So I'd been here for 1.5 years and I hadn't told anyone about my sister or what we'd gone through. And when I reflect back to that, you do carry the grief in a different way, in terms of you carry it internally, and carrying grief internally is not good for you or for anybody. And I'm sure a lot of expats can probably relate to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk on that and speak on that. You ran a marathon to bring awareness to sudden adult death syndrome. I'm wondering if you wanted to talk and give us a little bit about information about that, because I didn't know anything about that. It was always, when we had babies, it was always like, Sid, don't put any blankets anywhere, don't put any teddy bears, move the cot, make sure there's room to it. Like, you can just hear the trauma from me even now, right? And when I spoke to you, Michelle, when you had explained to me, the story and about SADS, I was like, wow, I didn't know anything. Why is it so unknown?
My sister went to bed when she was 39 one night, a Saturday night, and she never woke up. Yeah. So it's not until you go through it that you realise how common it actually is. And data in the Middle East is not available. People aren't aware of it. In the UK, I think there's probably way more people that have died from sudden adult death than the statistics say, but yeah.
And so I wanted to ask some questions just so, viewers can know a little bit more about SADS. Do they know what the causes are?
So SADS is a condition which a person, if they're typically healthy, young, they've had no real symptoms before, most people will die when they're sleeping. I'm not sure why, but majority of cases when it's SADS, or it's athletes if they're playing football.
Right.
There's lots of cases where that's happened. The main causes of SADS is from an inherited cardiac condition.
Right.
And it's where it's affected from the heart's electrical system rather than its structure. And it often runs in families as well.
That was going to be my next question. Is it genetic?
Yes. So all first-degree relatives, after they've experienced something like this, are supposed to be screened. But I don't think we were ever told to be screened. But luckily, my younger sister is a cardiac nurse. Oh. So she works in that type of environment. So it was her who said we all need to go and get screened. But yes, all family members should be screened after.
Yeah.
That's a very important point.
It's hard because there's nothing you can do, like there's no signs of it before something really dramatic happened. Yeah. There was nothing your sister could have done to prevent that in a way, which is so hard.
It's interesting because I was reading a story. I think the family was in America. So I was doing some research last week. And the father had died from sudden adult on a certain date, exactly 12 months later to the day. So the wife was being prepared for the first milestone of the year, of anniversary of when the husband had died, and her son died that same day from sudden adult death, but he hadn't been told to be screened. Had he have been screened, they would have picked up that he had the heart condition. He wasn't, and therefore it was too late.
And you, obviously researching this, and it's not easy. I'm sure, I know you're so composed and we appreciate it, but it takes a lot for you to have to research these things and to feel passionate enough to share it with the community, to raise awareness. That's not easy, but it's appreciated.
It's not.
How would we know?
But I think for me personally, there's a lot of things that I'm doing at the moment where I'm trying to turn that pain into purpose. I find that by doing that, it's quite healing on the journeys. I'm trying to educate other people as well on a platform that I've got, just to make sure that the message gets out there and people are getting educated with how common it actually is and how important it is to be screened for that heart condition, because you never know.
And you're also talking about the importance of sleep.
It's a huge thing that I struggled with and still do. My insomnia has been really bad over the years, and it's not always been where I don't sleep all night. That was just at the beginning. I think that probably started in and around like the first few months.
Of course.
But then over the years, it's always been every single night. There's not been one night where I've gone to bed and slept all night and maybe woke up for a little bit and gone back to sleep. That's never happened. I'd either really struggle to go to sleep and maybe fall asleep 2, 3 a.m. and then you're then up at 6 a.m. with the kids. Or I would fall asleep very quickly because I was exhausted and then wake up at maybe 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And that was me for the day.
I would say it's the kids, and as well as on top of that, coupled with the grief journey and it's something you have to work on.
Yeah. And I think I definitely worked on it, and maybe a bit too much, because I remember there was so many times that I would go to the library with my children just to get them out of the house, and they'd go and get some books and do some colouring and whatever, and I would get probably 10 books out at a time,
Reading
all
about
based around sleep.
Yeah.
All of them. They'd all be like what to eat, what to do, what routine to have, and I would follow them.
Yeah.
And I'd do all the routine, and then I'd get into bed and think, okay, tonight I'm going to sleep. And then you're just wired.
Yeah.
You're exhausted, but you're wired.
Do you think it's a bit of a hypervigilance thing
Yeah.
as well? And like being the mum, and then what
Yeah.
happened to your sister?
I think it's that. I think it's a mix of things. I think it's a mix of having children, your hormones.
Yeah.
I think just the grief completely strips you bare.
Yeah.
But when I met my therapist, who I finally I remember her saying to me, and this was probably like a year after losing my sister, so I had a full year of that constant anxiety every single night. Even at 6 p.m, the anxiety would start, and I'd think, oh God, it's going to be bedtime soon, and the whole cycle's going to start again.
Yeah.
And then you'd get up the next morning and think, it's okay, tonight I'm going to sleep okay again. And I couldn't even nap in the day either, even if I had the opportunity. I just physically could not nap.
Yeah.
But my therapist said to me, Michelle, why would you want or be able to go to sleep? Your husband's dad went to sleep and died. Your sister went to sleep and died.
Doesn't feel safe to do that.
Your body has lost the inability to feel that safety, to just let go. And it wasn't until she said that, and I thought, it clicked. And I thought, okay, it feels better knowing that I'm not broken.
No.
I just need to retrain my brain in a way, and just reframing what she said as well. But that will stick with me forever, what she said, because I had gone through a number of people and just didn't...
Make that connection.
I didn't have that connection with them, and at no point did any of them say that.
Because they're addressing the reality of it.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, you'd be afraid. Of course, you'd be not wanting to sleep with all that happening. And it's so interesting how therapists can bring out that aha moment.
And I think it was the first time that I truly felt listened, I felt heard and felt held.
Yeah.
Because at the time as well, it was another time where at this point I was regularly contacting my GP, really twice a week. And because I was still breastfeeding, so at this point it was like I stopped breastfeeding when my daughter was 14 months, but because I was still breastfeeding, there was only certain medications that they could give me. And every single day I would wake up and that same cycle would, I haven't slept, blah, 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 blah. I'd phone my GP and say, I'm still not sleeping, I need some help. But at no point did they offer therapy. Every single time it would be, come and get the prescription, and every time it would be a different GP as well. So there was no continuity of care.
Yeah.
And I don't think they had any time to maybe read my notes of what I'd been prescribed previously, because I would drive to the doctors, pick up the prescription, drive to the pharmacy,